Okay, we need to talk for a few minutes about the rights of third-party beneficiaries to contracts. There's a concept in English common law. In some states it's still a very important concept, and in others it's not quite so important anymore, but it's called privity of contract. And privity of contract means, are you a party to the contract? Did you sign on the written agreement? Did you make promises in exchange for promises made to you? And the idea was, well, if you're not one of the people who signed the contract, you're some third-party bystander, maybe you don't have the right to sue if there's some problem with a breach of the contract. So the idea was you're only in privity and have the right to sue over the breach of a contract if you're one of the parties to the contract. And that makes sense up to a point, but then we begin to have some problems with that, because it's not a problem if George, the homeowner, hires Sam, the contractor, to build the patio in George's backyard, because we have George is going to pay Sam, Sam's going to do the work for George, and so only Sam and George sign the contract. But what if George hires Sam to build that beautiful patio at his daughter Sally's house, and then George doesn't perform, or Sam, the contractor, doesn't build the patio for Sally, and George is not around. He died or he went off to Europe. So Sally wants to sue Sam because she never got her patio, and she knows that her dad, George, paid Sam for a patio. Does Sally have the right to sue Sam? Well, she didn't sign the agreement, so in a state that has a strict privity of contract rule, maybe not. But in most states, even in the privity of contract states, if Sally is an intended beneficiary, an intentionally described beneficiary of the contract, then she has the right to sue Sam if Sam doesn't perform. She has to be an intentional beneficiary, though. It has to say in the contract, George is hiring Sam to build the patio for Sally. So it says it's going to be for Sally right in the contract, so she's an intended beneficiary and she has rights. But what if George hires Sam to build 10,000 bicycles, and he's going to sell them at his daughter Sally's store, and Sally's going to make a big profit on the bikes, but it doesn't say anything about Sally getting any kind of benefit from the contract. It's a contract between George and Sam to build a bunch of bicycles and deliver them to George's house. Well, then Sally is not an intended beneficiary, she's just an incidental beneficiary. She's not mentioned in the contract. There's nothing in the contract that says that's for her benefit. If Sam breaches the contract in that case, Sally has no right to sue. She's not an intended beneficiary. She's only an incidental beneficiary. Incident to the contract, she may get some benefit, but too bad. She wasn't specifically described in the agreement. Now, if you think about this contract, this idea that sometimes third parties to a contract have contract rights even though they're not signed on the agreement, it's an incredibly important concept. It's basically every life insurance policy in the world. If you're a husband, you buy a life insurance policy that says if I die, my wife gets $100,000. Well, the contract is between the husband and the insurance company, and the husband's dead and gone. Wife is obviously an intended beneficiary of that contract, and if the insurance company doesn't pay, she's got the right to sue. So that's why the rights of third parties in contracts can be very important. Now, there's another concept that comes up with regard to the rights of third parties, and that is that the rights in contracts and the duties and obligations in contracts can sometimes be assigned to someone else. If you're in trouble paying a debt and someone's about to sue you, and you're almost done with the $30,000 patio that you're building at my house, and I'm going to pay you on Friday $30,000, you could assign that right to payment. The right for me to get paid $30,000 by Bob on Friday. If you won't sue me, I'll assign that to you, Acme Credit Card Company, and I'll notify Bob on Friday when I'm done with the job. Pay the credit card company and not me. So that would be an assignment of rights. You can also delegate duties. I hire you as a contractor to build that $30,000 patio at my house, and the day after you agree to do that job, you get called by Donald Trump, and he wants you to build a $10 million building in downtown Sacramento. Well, you're going to make a much bigger profit working for Trump, and you got to put all your time and energy into that, so you don't have time to build my patio anymore. So you call one of your other contractor buddies and you say, look, I have this job to build a patio at Litchfield's house. I can't get to it. I'll give you the money, or I'll give you part of the money, and you go build the patio. And you can do that. You can delegate the duties. Couple of notes about delegating the duties, though. If you delegate some other contractor to do that patio at Litchfield's house, it better be a contractor that you feel confident can do a decent job, because when you delegate duties that you promise to do in a contract, that does not get you off the hook. If the other contractor that you gave the job to screws up the job or doesn't complete the job, that homeowner still has the right to sue you. You're not off the hook because you delegated the duties to someone else. So make sure the person you delegate duties to follows through and does a good job. There are, however, certain types of contracts where you cannot delegate the duties. Most construction projects you can delegate the duties, but suppose that you were a world-famous portrait painter and you painted the portraits of kings and presidents, and I said to you, I want you to immortalize my lovely wife that I've been in love with for 50 years. How much would you charge me to paint a famous portrait of my wife? And you say $50,000. And I say, okay, I'll pay it. But you get busy doing the Donald Trump portrait, and you send your apprentice over to paint my wife's portrait. No, you see, I contracted to have I paid $50,000 to have you, the world famous painter, paint the portrait of my wife, not your junior assistant guy. So certain types of personal service contracts cannot be delegated. Any kind of a delegation of the duties or assignment of the rights that would increase the obligations on the other side, the guy that you sign in there, you delegate the duties and you say, but while you're there, build him a barbecue also, and that's not in the agreement and he doesn't get paid for that. No, you increase the duties. Or you say, well, I'm going to delegate this job for the patio to Sam, he's going to do it for you, but it's going to cost you an extra $5,000 if he does it. No, you've expanded the duties on the other side of the contract. You can't do that delegation of the duties. And of course there is the one other time when you cannot delegate the duties, and that is when the contract itself says, hey, this duty to perform is personal to you and it cannot be delegated. So if I was going to pay you, John Smith, the world famous portrait painter, to paint a portrait of my wife, if I was a good business person, I would probably have in the written contract a clause that says, look, you only get paid if this portrait is done by John Smith, the famous portrait painter, not by anybody else. This contract cannot be delegated or assigned. So those are the rights of basic overview of the rights of third parties in contracts, where they may not be signed on the dotted line as one of the promisors in the contract, but these third parties may also have rights and legal rights even to sue for breach of the contract under the right circumstances.